Objection Hearsay. Welcome back to the But I Don't Know podcast. It's been a couple of weeks and we're so excited to be back. My name is John.
Hello there. John, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic.
Awesome.
Don't you want to introduce yourself?
My name is JP.
Hi,
Pleased to
JP.
meet you.
His name is JP. We're really excited to be back here. We try and start our episodes with lots of energy, but that ends the moment JP takes over.
No, it doesn't.
It's really cool to be back filming again. We did take a couple of weeks off, and we apologize for that, but it is what it is. You know, we're busy men, and sometimes we need a little bit of a break. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So for those of you who are listening for the first time, we want to notify you that we have a website that is our own website. It's super cool.
Push notification.
Notifying you. The website address is www.dunocast.co.za. That's www.dunocast.co.za. On there, you're going to find all our podcast episodes. You'll find a few blog posts from yesteryear, and you will also find a merch store. That's on www.dunocast.co.za/merch. And you'll find t-shirts on there which look like JP's t-shirt that he's currently wearing.
Look at it.
So we really want to encourage you to jump over to that merch store, order a shirt. The more you order, the cheaper it is, because you do pay courier fee on top of that. And the courier fee doesn't get more expensive with the more shirts you order. So pro tip, order lots of shirts, save yourself some money.
That's how math works.
Basic math, man. Basic math. But by doing so, you not only support JP and I, but you also support global missions through a missions agency called DO Missions, which is part of the local congregation JP and I attend, presently DO Victoria Church. And that agency reaches all the way around the world, Russia, India. I don't even know all the places off the top of my head, but we reach into a lot of places. Yeah. They're all over the place, shining light into a dark world. So by ordering a t-shirt, you contribute to that in a tangible way, but you also help us do what we do here every single week, except for the last few weeks. So let's jump into this week's conversation. We're doing things a little bit differently this week. You'll notice our episode is titled Objection Hearsay. I'm sure some of you immediately assumed we're talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Which
Captain Jack Sparrow himself.
Captain Jack Sparrow. You're not wrong about that. We are definitely talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but we're also going to be talking about a couple of other things today. We're going to do a little bit of an express episode, seeing as though we've missed a few weeks.
Yeah.
We're going to jump from topic to topic.
Seeing as the few weeks we've missed, everything's just happened.
No, we didn't choose wisely, but I mean, you know, exhaustion doesn't...
exhaustion waits for no man.
Waits for no man. Anyway, so let's jump right into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard conversation, JP. For those of you who don't know, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp are currently in a court case. They've locked
vicious battle.
A vicious battle to the end of their marriage. Unfortunately, they're undergoing divorces and all sorts of things, but the court case is actually about abuse, am I correct?
Well, the court case is a defamation court case.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
So there were allegations made by Amber Heard, and they settled out of court the first time.
Yeah.
And then she wrote an op-ed piece in some sort of journal.
Yeah.
Accusing Johnny of doing unsavory things.
Yes.
And then he sued her for defamation. And it turns out that she did some unsavory things.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
That's a very deep reference for those of you who's following the court case.
Unsavory things is a very diplomatic way of putting all all these allegations and accusations. Now the world has been following with bated breath as this court case is being publicized all over the YouTubes and the interwebs and news distributors and flippin' memes and gags.
I love the memes.
And everywhere.
The memes are the greatest.
But obviously, we're not here just to talk about memes and what the media is saying. We're here to talk a little bit about, like, how does a Christian respond to this, and what is it? What influence does it have on us, etc., and so forth? You know, like straight off the bat, like off the top of your head, when you found out about all of this and stuff. What did you make of it? You know, aside from the fact that it's ridiculous and it's a circus, but like morally, ethically.
Yeah. Well, it's a bad situation. But immediately my first response was, if this was a case between two people who we didn't know, no one would care.
Facts. Hard
And
facts.
this is probably one of the most famous guys in the world.
Well loved.
Well respected
Yes.
in the arts of pretending to be someone else.
Yes, indeed.
And yeah, it's look, I'm not a guy who chooses sides. I don't think you've got a clear good guy and a clear bad guy in this case.
So in Afrikaans, one would say jy's 'n draadsitter.
No, I'm not. I'm like an obscure, faraway distance viewer.
Irrelevant.
Just checking out what's happening, asking what are they doing.
Are they
over
even
there?
sides?
Yeah, what
Can't
is
tell
happening
from here.
Yeah, but I followed some of the testimony, specifically the testimony of Johnny Depp and of Amber Heard a little bit.
Yeah.
And like when I look at all the recordings and all the video recordings and the voice recordings and the text messages and the emails and stuff, it's just clear to me that like both of these people are just so broken.
Yeah.
And that's like my first response is saying, well, why are we putting this in the public eye? Because now all of this is like Johnny Depp and I'm not too sure of Amber Heard, but like Johnny Depp has gone through some bad stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, some drug addiction, some alcohol abuse, and all those sorts of things. And
Yeah.
it seems to me like he tried to get help at some points in his life.
Yeah.
And that's a very vulnerable time. And now it's just all over the internet. It's all over
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, well, it exposes something about human nature, I think. And that is if my life were to be exposed, like Johnny Depp's life is exposed, you know, how would people's reaction be towards me?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's a bad situation, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that was very much one of my gut responses when I found out and sort of jumped onto the internet and had a look at what was happening. I didn't know much of the backstory at all. In fact, even now, I don't know much. Let's put it this way. The first I found out that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were married was when I found out there was a court case between them. And that's just because I don't pay attention and I don't care often enough.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough. I mean,
but when I found out about it, one of the first things that I thought was, it's so sad that this is the most publicized marriage in the world today. And it is such a broken marriage. And obviously, what also saddens me, to be clear, is that it's not an exception. You know, it would be sad for different reasons if what was being shown in that court case was an exception. It would be sad then because we're highlighting something that isn't common.
Yeah.
And that would make it more common. But
yeah,
it's sad in a whole different way because you can know this is not uncommon.
yeah.
Statistically, it's pretty cut and dry that this is commonplace. That marriages are firstly unhappy. Either both spouses or one spouse is unhappy. And secondly, that marriages are often abusive in some nature, whether verbally, emotionally, physically. There's often abuse that happens within marriage. And what's particularly sad about that is that marriage is a godly institute. It's sacred in some way. And yet, in the world at large, marriage has already become such a negative connotation. You stand around the braai fire with a bunch of Christian men, and it's almost like clockwork that somebody's going to make a joke about being unhappy in their marriage in some way. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. And that's really sad. And this whole situation just brought that to my memory. And I was like, that sucks.
Yeah, I think, that's what I wanted to say is that, this is now a publicized thing that's happening. And it's like, well, how could this happen? But it's as you say, it happens quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And statistically speaking, and I'm not making any accusations here, I'm just saying what the facts are. Statistically speaking, when there's abuse, very specifically, if the abuse comes from the woman's side, which happens more often than people think. But when that happens, very few times is it a one-way thing. I'm not saying Johnny Depp is abusive or whatever. What I've heard, I don't know. I can't say yes or no.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. I think.
Yeah. Luckily, we are not the jury or the judge in this case. So.
Absolutely, yeah. But I do think that we need to be mindful that this happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
It happens quite often. And the thing that I want to sort of say there is, obviously I'm not a married guy, but what I've observed is that our culture plays a big role in that, the humiliation of men specifically plays a huge role, specifically in marriage, because when we look at and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but when we look at the biblical portrayal of what marriage should be, the man should be the like, I don't want to say the leader of the house, but he leads his wife. And the concept of marriage, or the picture of marriage, should reflect the picture of Christ and the church. That is the biblical idea. The best, let me put it this way, the best picture of Christ and the church is marriage. And Western culture, and I say Western culture because you don't see this really any other place, has turned that around, where it's a humiliation for the man. Like when we look at the bachelor's parties, the husband to be, or the man, gets dressed in silly clothes and he gets humiliated in public and all those sorts of things. He gets, and it's like, well, you are breaking down the leader of the house, and it's sort of, you're attacking the foundation of the marriage. Same with these jokes and everything. It's very often thrown the other way. But it's always the wife is being portrayed as the ball and chains.
For sure.
It's and the biblical idea of marriage gets attacked. Unconsciously even. But I think it starts with our culture. It's a cultural thing, I think.
So just one or two side notes quick. Obviously, JB and I are talking largely from the experience of men. When we talk about standing around the braai and those jokes being flown around, we speak having that experience. but none of us really know what happens when women get together and do what women do.
Sure.
Sure.
This is a very one-sided conversation.
Maybe there's equivalent jokes being thrown around there that we don't know about.
Could very well be.
Men are usually loud and obnoxious.
Yeah,
so
that is true. Yeah.
But another thing I want to mention quickly is you spoke about the humiliation of a man at his bachelor's party. The other thing that'll often be said is like, enjoy your last night of being single kind of thing, right? So you got to like have a big hoo-ha or whatever it is. But we've actually spoken about this before with regards to how churches handle altar calls and like salvations. In the modern world, we find the church will do an altar call and we'll ask people to close their eyes, you know? Close your eyes. Nobody's going to watch you. Just put your hand up if you want to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. The most significant, important decision you will ever make ever.
Yeah.
But nobody needs to see it. Just do it in the privacy of yourself. Everyone's eyes are closed. And then when you do it and you've said a prayer, everyone can open their eyes and then they'll applaud you maybe. That's good.
Well, they'll applaud anonymously. They don't know who they're applauding. Yeah.
And then we always kind of say when we've spoken about it, it should be the other way around. You know, we should celebrate that because it's such an important and crucial decision. That person should be treated like an absolute VIP. You know, we should be carrying them on our shoulders and celebrating them.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, the man who finds a good wife and chooses to commit to her and, as you mentioned, reflect the relationship of Christ and the church should be celebrated and uplifted and given blessings and sent on his way with strength and encouragement.
Yeah.
And instead we do the exact opposite. Now, also with that, I actually wanted to mention another disclaimer is we're also speaking very much in a limited context. We don't know what happens in most cultures in the world with regards to bachelor's parties. I'm sure there's some cultures who really, really do those things.
Sure.
They bless the men and stuff. But in sort of specifically the South African context, bachelor's parties are so counterproductive.
I'd say Western culture.
Yeah. It's incredibly counterproductive.
Yeah.
And like you say, it starts. We break down the foundation of marriage from before marriage even begins. And I think there's a lot more to speak about, like the biblical role of a man and a woman and stuff. And I noticed you tried to kind of just sort of dodge around it a little bit because I think that's a whole conversation. We'll do an episode one day where we chat about that. So I think you did well too. For now.
And then you brought it up again, John.
Yeah, but I want to acknowledge for our listeners that we acknowledge there's a conversation to be had there. And I don't think JP's dodging it because he doesn't want to talk about it. I think it's not for today.
We've got 3 topics to talk about today. So
Exactly. And I think we should maybe jump over to the next topic from here. So we've obviously been talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. And before we started the episode, we discussed a really great segue to our next topic. So, JP, why don't you segue us to the next topic?
Okay, well, speaking of Amber Heard and her relationships, John.
Oh, yes, as we were doing.
Yes, you know that she was married to Johnny Depp at one point, but they got divorced, and now this whole trial gets going.
Yes.
But did you know that she was once in a relationship?
Another one?
Another one.
Wow. Tell me more.
Romantically.
Tell me more.
With a man.
That's good.
And this man's name is Elon Musk.
Elon
Musk.
The tall African male.
And do you know what Elon Musk did the other day?
Tell me what Elon Musk did the other day.
He made a purchase.
Oh, I also made a purchase the other day.
Of $44 billion.
Mine wasn't that expensive.
No, mine was about 40, but not...
$40?
40 billion, yeah.
Okay.
But Elon Musk bought Twitter. And the world exploded.
What a twit face. Sorry, that was Please continue. Hey Elon, if you're listening to this,
He's gonna ban you from Twitter. I was gonna,
can't wait to be banned.
But he bought
Anyway.
Twitter, and the world collectively lost its mind. And for some
Herd
reason,
mentality.
sheep. This is Amber Heard. For some reason, this is a divisive issue.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, people care about what billionaires spend their money on.
I mean, for Elon Musk, that was like not even a big amount of money. He was like,
Small change. Just
spend a bit of cash
yeah, just a
before we go.
card or cash. No, cash.
Pulls up there with his $1 billion
Tesla truck.
Yeah.
Unloads the money. There you go.
Anyway, so there's
Welcome back, Donald Trump.
oh my word, what a tangent. So there's a reason why we went on this tangent. It's to organically transition us from the Johnny Depp conversation to the Elon Musk conversation about the fact that he bought Twitter. Can
It's
you
a fact
believe
that
it?
Amber Heard and he was in a relationship, by the way. I just want to say.
It is apparently.
not just something I made
JP
up.
told me so.
Trust me, bro.
So the big thing, though, I think that's sort of making it divisive and stuff is obviously the issue of freedom of speech, which is apparently one of the big reasons why Elon decided to make the purchase, because he was like, these people are making bad decisions about who they ban and how they make those decisions. And he was like, I'm going to reform this entire company.
Platform, yeah.
Yeah. And so he was like, the best way to reform something is buy it.
Is being in control of it.
Imagine Martin Luther took that approach.
Buying the Catholic Church.
He's like, hey, Catholic Church, I'm going to buy you and then I can change everything. No, he just like stapled a laminated sheet of paper. I mean, look, in modern day times, it would have been a press-sticked piece of laminated paper.
It would have been an email.
It would have.
I hope this email finds you well.
Oh, that's such another tangent. So Elon Musk is basically doing what Martin Luther did to the Catholic
This
Church.
is such a weird analogy that you're pulling up. But sure, let's run with it. Let's run with it.
He's doing that to Twitter. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so it's really dumb. But yeah, so he's like, I want to come in and change the way they handle freedom of speech. Now, I don't actually know what his end game is. Like, has he actually made any changes?
Well, he set some goals actually
Okay.
that I've heard. Well, first of all, he's going to change the policy regarding freedom of speech completely.
Yeah.
He has said on record, I think, that he's going to reverse the permanent ban of Donald Trump.
Okay.
So if you don't know that Donald Trump got banned right after, or just before he gave power over to Joe Biden, Twitter was like, meh.
Yeah.
And we all know Donald Trump loved Twitter. And so Elon Musk said, well, he's making you guys money. What are you doing? You're banning like your biggest client. But anyway.
Yeah.
I know that Elon Musk is a free speech absolutist.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in any restrictions. He even said that Twitter banning some Russian propaganda is going against the idea of freedom of speech, just to give an idea.
Yeah.
That has made a lot of people very angry at him.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing is regarding the policies of Twitter. I'm not sure how this works because I'm not a technical guy, but he wants to make the coding and everything that goes along with Twitter He wants to make that open source.
Okay, I thought there was something.
Yeah, so that it's more transparent, so that anyone can go and look at what the policies are, because
Shot.
no one really knows what the policies are.
Yeah.
The policies
And how the algorithm works.
exactly
Yeah.
that. Because at the moment, the policies are extremely vague, whereas someone like, say, Donald Trump would get banned, because of misinformation, but someone like the Taliban stays on Twitter, and ISIS stays on Twitter.
Yeah.
Doesn't get banned for inciting violence, which they do every single day. So it's a bit confusing. And so I think, I know that he said that he wants to make that open source so that people can see how the algorithm works. Whether or not he's going to change the algorithm, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I haven't followed the story as closely as say I have with the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yeah, but now here's the thing, right? So talking about freedom of speech, and he's going to rework that entire policy, and you say he's a free speech absolutist. What would you consider yourself in that regard?
Well, it depends on what you mean by freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Obviously, incitement is not I would agree with the American standard of incitement isn't freedom of speech. If you incite someone to do something that's illegal, that's not freedom of speech. But I would definitely not call myself a free speech absolutist. As a Christian, I don't think Christians have freedom of speech to the sense that we can just say what we want to say. The Bible has very clear guidelines of what we can say and what we can't say. We are not allowed to tell a lie.
Yeah.
Now, freedom of speech would encompass that. Say you've got the freedom to tell a lie. It's fine.
Yeah.
But Scripture makes it clear that lying is bad. Blaspheming God is bad.
Absolutely.
Dirty language or vain. All those sorts of, if I think about the scripture in James, it says that the tongue, that there's the power of life and death is in the tongue. And it's alluding to the fact that there are just some things that you shouldn't say.
Yeah.
Because it does damage at the end of the day.
Yeah, we shouldn't speak curses upon people and things like that.
Yeah.
I would say my approach is, I've always thought of it this way. Politically, I'm a free speech absolutist.
Oh, sure.
Probably even more so than Elon Musk. I think that there should be a public platform, where anybody is allowed to say literally anything they want to say and not be held accountable for it. And what I mean by that is, obviously, if you come out and say, I murdered somebody, you can be held accountable for murdering somebody.
Yeah.
But not be held accountable for the fact that you said you murdered somebody.
Yeah.
But there's a very... I would never really express this, and I wouldn't particularly vote for it. Now, I wouldn't particularly vote for much, to be clear. But there's a reason why I would take that stance. And I'm not 100% sure if this is completely biblical, and that's why I also wouldn't push for it or not. But I think that there's a need for the world to see how broken it is. And freedom of speech policies and things like, for instance, saying incitement isn't freedom of speech, and so we're going to limit incitement, is basically guarding the world from seeing the brokenness that is the world. We're saying we want to be able to show the world the good, nice stuff. And I believe that the world should be let loose on itself at some point, to some degree. Now, this is a whole long conversation. In fact, maybe one day we'll do an episode on this in itself, but I feel like we've created a society. We live in a society.
Get a load of this society.
Whereas Christians, and look, we as Christians had a lot to do with creating this society.
Sure.
Where if we found ourselves in the midst of the public, we are comfortable. Because they look and sound at least bearable within a Christian moral and ethical culture.
Yeah.
And that's a problem firstly for us, but it's also a problem for the world. It's a problem that they think they're doing okay when they're not. They're broken and terribly so. But we just don't see all the brokenness because we've put measures in place to protect our children from seeing that brokenness.
Yeah.
And I totally understand it. I totally understand the desire to protect my child from seeing that brokenness. But it's not the government's job to do that.
Sure.
It's my job as a parent to do that. And obviously, that's where there's this crossing of a line between political and religious responsibility, because as a citizen of the country, it's my responsibility to hold the government accountable. And so as a Christian, I hold them accountable for what they show my children. And so there's this cross-pollination, or you know what I'm saying. There's this relationship that happens there.
Yeah.
And so I'm not suggesting now that there should absolutely be this platform where everyone can just say whatever they want, and it is what it is. But I do think that if the world were to generate and fight for its right to say whatever it wants to say, I wouldn't get in the world's way.
Yeah. No, I think. Yeah.
I agree with you 100% that as a Christian, we have a responsibility and a commandment actually to put a guard in front of our mouths and to watch what we say.
Yeah.
And I think on this podcast, we sometimes push the boundaries of that. I'll admit it. But
I won't.
no, what I mean by that is like sometimes we'll talk about ideas and stuff that, like now me talking about the fact of like the world should see how broken the world is. I don't know, like I'm definitely pushing the boundary with what we're putting out there in the sense of it's a very controversial and dangerous thing to be playing with, because you're playing with generations of people and children and stuff. So I'm not saying like we're pushing heresy or anything, but we definitely have a responsibility to the public, the people who listen to us. And I think part of the purpose of our podcast is to kind of push the boundaries of what the public is willing to talk about to some degree, at least when it comes to Christianity.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm just saying we need to hold ourselves accountable and responsible and not wait for the government to do it for us.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing I would say there is I don't think we hold ourselves accountable. I think God holds us accountable.
That's a good point.
I think for what we say, the government really doesn't have the authority to pass judgment on us.
Yeah.
Because, well, this is a political argument, but because the question has to be asked, well, who decides what is good to say and what is bad to say?
Well, that's it.
That's one aspect. So I think in regards of the government and political systems and law and stuff, I don't think that there should be much restriction at all.
Yeah.
Firstly, because, well, for us as Christians to fulfill our calling of spreading the gospel, we need as much as free speech as we can get.
Yeah.
You know?
Regardless of whether we've got it politically or not, we're going to do it.
Yeah. But it's just easier for us if we're legally allowed to.
Yeah.
You know? If the government doesn't change the law in 15 minutes, we're legally allowed to leave. That's a very old meme, but I'm not. Yeah. But I think religiously or in terms of my faith, I believe that God will hold every word accountable.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference comes in. Is I don't think the government should play God in that regard.
Yeah, shot. On that note of the government playing God.
Oh yes, John.
Here comes a smooth segue. You ready for it? On the note of the government playing God, have you heard
maybe, I don't know.
of how the American government
Joe Biden
is currently deliberating and discussing and considering overthrowing certain rules and laws that currently control and dictate the way the country handles taking human life.
What a smooth segue. Wow.
That's impressive, isn't it? So, the last topic we decided we're going to tackle today is the issue of Roe v. Wade. Again, American news,
Yes.
because no other news matters.
Nothing else matters.
I hate the fact that we talk about American stuff so much, but it is what it is. I mean,
They are the catalyst of wasted civilization.
and degradation. But anyway,
Lots.
and in my defense, I in particular did look at what's going on in the South African climate at the moment, and honestly, like, there's not much super controversial and stuff going on right now. South Africa's pretty chilled.
Yeah.
We're okay. Like, nobody ever likes the president, no matter who's the president. Nobody ever likes him, and that's okay, you know. That's about the most drama we get. Oh, and they steal lots of money. But I mean, outside of that,
I've been doing that for years.
yeah. So anyway, in America, there's the Roe v. Wade thing, which is all about abortion and when is a fetus considered a human life and all this kind of jazz. And ultimately, this decision that they're making or made, I don't know yet. Have they made the decision?
No. So what happened? It's a very complicated story.
Yes.
Right? So what happened, and it's intriguing because it shows you where people's priorities are. The Supreme Court of America made a decision a few years ago, Roe v. Wade,
Yes.
where they said that it's a woman's fundamental right to get an abortion constitutionally, using a clause in the Constitution or an amendment in the Constitution, I'm not completely sure, under the right of privacy. So every American has the right to privacy, and they use this to say that a woman has, under the right of privacy, she's got the right to get an abortion. Now, what people don't understand about this ruling is if they overthrow it, it's not that abortion is going to go away.
Yeah.
It's that the idea that it's a woman's fundamental constitutional human right, that idea goes away.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's going to go to each individual state, where they will get to decide what they are going to do with abortion.
Yeah.
So states such as California and New York and your more liberal states, they won't get rid of abortion.
No, for sure.
So abortion is not going to go away. In some states it might, depending on what the ruling party decides.
Yeah.
But that's basically what it means. But so what happened was, and it shows you where people's priorities lie, is that there was a draft in the Supreme Court. One of the judges on the Supreme Court wrote this draft, and the draft got leaked. And that is a serious offense, by the way, under American law, as I understand it. You're not allowed to leak plans of Supreme Court justices before they become public.
Yeah.
And before they, get passed or whatever the case may be. So the draft got leaked that the Supreme Court is considering overthrowing this decision that they made a few years ago.
Yeah.
So the decision hasn't been overthrown yet. They are pondering whether or not they should. Because the argument is not necessarily because of abortion. The argument is that the decision is a bad decision.
Yeah.
That under the right of privacy that a woman can get an abortion. That's kind of the argument, saying, well, that's not really what the Constitution meant. When they wrote the Constitution, they didn't, when they said that each person shall have the right of privacy or whatever, they didn't mean under that subtext this means that women can get abortions up until the last trimester or whatever the case may be. That's the argument that they're making. And so that's what is happening now. But it shows you where their priorities are, because people are more upset about the draft than the fact that this draft got leaked.
Yeah.
Which is much more significant if you take into account the kind of trouble that one can get into for leaking this kind of information.
Yeah, and most likely the fact that it was leaked with a political agenda.
Oh, for sure, yeah, for sure.
And that's going to be a big.
Yeah, well, if you take the effect of what this has, people have started protesting outside of these justices' houses, homes, where their family lives.
Yeah.
The majority of political commentators agree that this is an intimidation tactic from the one side. So it's political all the way through.
100%, yeah. And what's really sad for me is that the future of human lives hangs in the balance on a political battle that really isn't about abortion.
Yeah.
It's about money and power.
Yeah.
But abortion is the weapon that's being wielded to divide the masses, regardless of the consequences and the aftermath. It's just being wielded out in the open as a weapon, and very few people see that. You know, I mean, specifically in America. America's a weird place for me in that regard. Like, they are one of the most politically influenced countries in the world, in the sense of like how they allow their political system to influence them. Obviously, you go to a place like China or Russia, there's political influence because they make themselves have influence. But in America, it's like the people allow it to happen.
Yeah.
And they can literally decide tomorrow that it stops.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something in us humans, man, that just loves being divided about issues. And we just want to fight about it. And we want to, most importantly, be right.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Millions of babies dying, I don't care.
Yeah, no.
I want to be right about this.
Yeah.
And I will flip and fight on this hill till the day I die.
Yeah.
So random.
Yeah, I know, it's sad. But on the topic, because ultimately I don't really care about
Roe v. Wade.
The law and the politic behind it.
Yeah.
It's a very sensitive issue, I understand it. But let's maybe speak about the concept of abortion. And it's one of those tough topics. Not really, but it's a tough topic to speak about, at least.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your opinion is.
It's a tough conversation, mainly because of the political agenda behind it, and the fact that you will get cancelled if you just flip and say the one wrong word. You know, like when I said just now, 1 million babies are dying. The fact that I used the word babies already puts me in a camp, and I could get cancelled for saying that. And that's what makes it so difficult. I find often these things aren't difficult issues to deliberate, except for the pressure that's being placed on you by society to say things a certain way.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a difficult conversation to have. It's not a difficult...
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of things are like that. But luckily here at the But I Don't Know podcast, we're all about sharing things that we know nothing about. And so, full disclaimer, we are not experts on the matter of biology and science.
I'm not a biologist.
Nor are we authorities on the issue of scriptural truth. But we have opinions.
We do.
And our opinions, thanks to people like Elon Musk, are allowed to be aired in public.
Thanks, Elon.
And so here at the But I Don't Know podcast, we have no shame in talking about our opinions because we could be wrong about them, and we're okay with being wrong. In fact, if we are wrong, we encourage you to let us know down in the comments below or over email. We encourage it. So, having said that, my opinion on abortion is it's a bunch of baloney. Let me just be straight up, right? I think there's medical situations where the issue of abortion can potentially be a way out of a sticky medical emergency, right? And I can't disagree with that. There's literal evidence that shows us if we abort a baby in this circumstance, the mother can be saved. Off we go. Now we know that in history, women dying at childbirth was a common thing. It happened all the time. I don't know if we have a direct scriptural reference of it happening. I'm pretty sure there's a story in the Bible where it speaks about a woman dying in childbirth. Not that it matters much. I'm just kind of rambling off there. I think it even happened in the Bible. Woman dying at childbirth. It was somewhat a common occurrence. And I almost want to say the miracle of modern medicine, but some people might not be happy with me saying that, has allowed us to, in many cases, prevent that. But at the loss of a human child. Now, let's put it out there like this. I think most often the division on the issue of abortion is not about whether it's good or bad to kill a baby. Everybody agrees it's bad to kill a baby.
Sure.
The question is it a baby?
That's
actually what we debate.
Yeah.
Because everybody agrees if it's a baby, don't kill it. And there are some people who'd be like, okay, there's medical reasons, and I'm not going to get into that conversation.
Well, that's a very easy thing to answer, someone who brings that up, because if you say you're against abortion and they're like, oh, but what about rape and incest, and what about medical emergencies? The first thing that you say is, okay, if we take those out of the equation, let's say I accept those.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with banning the rest of it? They'll be like, no. And I'm like, well, then don't bring it up.
Yeah.
Because that's not...
Yeah, like if I walked up to you and cut your leg off, just you walking in Pick and Pay, and I walk up to you and I've got a chainsaw and I cut your leg off, is that okay? No, it's not okay. But if your leg has gangrene and is going to poison your blood and you're going to have a heart attack and a doctor puts you on an operating table and amputates your leg, nobody's got a problem with that. I'm just saying... There are differences in those situations that society accepts. I'm not saying whether I accept that or not.
Yeah.
Society gladly accepts those exceptions.
Yeah. No, but what they do is it's a red herring. They say, well, what about these instances?
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, if we allow these instances, would you agree with me that the rest are bad?
Yeah.
Most likely they'd say, no, the rest are still good.
Yeah.
And the rest should be allowed. And it's like, okay, why bring this up in the first place?
Yeah.
You're just for abortion. You're not for abortion because of medical emergencies.
Yeah.
You are just pro-abortion. And we can have a conversation then. But don't act as if,
Yeah.
But John, I think the question definitely is it a human life that you are ending? That's the ultimate question.
Yeah, and as a Christian... I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, it's a human life. It is what it is. Now, some people might be like, but miscarriages and accidental miscarriages. And look, JP and I don't have the answers for you. JP tried to become a biologist but failed. I'm just kidding. He didn't. But like none of us
don't bring that up now.
None of us. None of us
sensitive
are
issue.
biologists, and none of us can answer all those medical questions. But what we can say with some sort of confidence, at least I'm somewhat speaking for myself here. JP might disagree with me. Is that human life is sacred? It's given and taken by God, and that the gift of reproduction is the means of which God chose to fulfill that plan of His. It's His plan, not our plan. We didn't decide to reproduce. God commanded us to. It's a gift that's been given to us, and we need to take responsibility of it. And I think that's part of the problem, though, in this whole conversation is that the sense of responsibility of our sexual nature has disappeared in modern society. We don't want to take responsibility for being in control of our sexual urges. So we want to be able to have sex every single weekend if we want to. And if we happen to accidentally get pregnant, we want to be able to backpedal and not carry the responsibility. But the very fact that you have that instinct and the tools required to have a sexual experience is a gift from God, and people don't treat it that way, and that's primarily where all of this goes wrong. Is we don't want to take responsibility for the gift that God has so freely given to us, and obviously, in order to take responsibility of that gift, one needs to acknowledge that God is the giver of that gift, which most of society misses in the first place anyway. So as a Christian, and that's a very important classification, because if you're not a Christian, I don't expect you to have this view. So don't get all offended at me and stuff. I'm literally speaking as a Christian male, okay? I'm not imposing this on you.
Are you saying you're a man?
I am a man. Both by choice and by biblical standards, and also by biological standards. But anyway, as a Christian male, there is no doubt in my brain that abortion in general, in this general conversation, is a bad idea, and it does not honor God in general. I want to put a footnote there that I believe in exceptions. I really do. But I believe that we need to handle things that are exceptions as exceptions.
Yeah, sure.
And I think we've moved away from that in society, where we're trying to turn the exceptions into rules, and it's just going to bite us in the ass.
Yeah.
In the buttock.
Yeah. I think I agree 100% with what you said. As a Christian, I also think that abortion has become this convenient scapegoat.
Yeah.
And I know that we've sort of alluded to this, that people say, okay, but there are real emergencies and these sorts of things. That doesn't change the fact that the vast majority of abortions are done because of convenience sake.
Yeah.
That's just the fact.
Yeah.
And I've heard biologists, I'm not a biologist myself, as John so adequately said.
Reiterating
that fact, yeah. But I've heard biologists make this argument, saying that there's no getting around the fact that a fetus in any stage of development, when it's conceived, has got its own set of DNA, has got its own set of genetic codes and the way it's put together.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you can't ignore the fact that this is a potential human life.
Yeah.
And when left to go its natural course, this will turn into, well, it will change, like the way that a fetus changes in the womb. It will change into a little baby, and then
it will evolve.
It will. But the fact is, once you end that set of DNA, you're ending a potential human life at the very least.
Yeah.
And I would go as far as to say you are ending a human life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that with this, it's actually a very loaded conversation, and we might get cancelled after this episode, and so be it. We're actually really counting the days. We're wondering when. I mean, we don't have enough views yet to get cancelled, but we'll get cancelled eventually. I think with this conversation,
Bro, YouTube banned us once because we said that the vaccine isn't the mark of the beast.
that was fantastic. We highly recommend you go watch that episode, by the way. Please, it's called, I'll tell you now what it's called, and then I'm going to carry on with my thought in a moment if I remember it.
I'll play elevator music.
You shall be marked. Episode 7, You Shall Be Marked. I believe it was that episode. It was either that one or episode 8, Will God Heal You? Someone could listen to both of them. We make a pretty clear-cut argument that the vaccine for... Well, we've just said that word a couple of times now. We're going to get blocked again.
I thought of that exact thing. It's like YouTube's going to block this video.
Anyway, what we are talking about was not the mark of the beast.
The jawbone.
and yet YouTube decided that they disagreed with us.
That's misinformation.
It's misinformation. Anyways, so I think this whole conversation about abortion and you're speaking about like how it's for... What's the words you used? Most abortions are for convenience sake. I think that there's an important conversation to be had there. But there's so much loaded in society already that geared us towards being ready for where we are right now. And I want to come full circle a little bit back to the issue of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and how we mentioned how incredibly sad it is, how marriages are suffering. And ultimately, society really has very little regard for the gift of marriage and reproduction. It's been totally broken down. Totally broken down. We were given a clear instruction to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth. And there's a beautiful thing in that. Being able to raise up generations of people as stewards and as... There's another word that the Bible uses that I can't think of right now. But as stewards of this planet, we've been tasked with looking after it. And sure, we're not doing a great job, but that's part of the problem. But to raise up generations and generations, to firstly continue that stewardship, but secondly to allow God to continue revealing His glory in those generations. All at the same time obeying His commandments and stuff. And so many of these modern movements, feminist movements, the alphabet people, abortion, the high rates of divorce, are all chipping away at that very fundamental task of humans to preserve life and to love life and to encourage the progression of life. And instead, we're encouraging the progression of self instead of the progression of life itself.
Yeah.
And it's a fundamental worldview problem. And worldview, in fact, I read somewhere a study where they suggest that it's harder to change somebody's worldview than it is to change their religious views. Very often, a person's worldview will dictate their religious views. And as a Christian, that was quite a turmoil for me because we're told to go out into the world and make disciples of all nations. And now some nations, the worldview itself is counter the Christian religious worldview.
Yeah.
But I believe that we've then been tasked essentially to speak into those worldviews.
Yeah.
And abortion's one of those issues that we need to speak into.
Yeah.
And we need to come at it from the angle of we love human life and we want to see generations upon generations of human life continuing to display the glory of God, whether it be through judgment or whether it be through grace, mercy, righteousness. And that should be what we wish to propagate. But instead, society's just chipping that away. It's just constantly chipping it away.
Yeah.
through all these new social justice movements. They're all geared towards this one simple task. Well, they're not geared towards it, but they all have the consequence of, if they are successful, then the purpose of man to reproduce and fill the earth and be stewards of creation and displaying the glory of God is going to dwindle and fade away.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, are you willing to really ask questions about the presuppositions that you have? You know, and I think we should kind of gear to ending this episode. But let me end it off by saying this, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of not as well. It should concern us to some degree. When the Satanic Church sues a state in America for putting restrictions on abortions and calling it a violation of religious freedom, that should make you ask questions at the very least.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's very... You're saying the silent part out loud at that point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's actually what happened. Is the state of Texas got sued by the Satanic Church in Texas for putting restrictions on abortions.
What a sad situation.
And calling it a violation of religious freedom.
Look, ultimately it's going to result in limited religious freedom for all religions. That's the end of the story. The end of the story is that they are going to eventually, in some way, have success in convincing society that it's religious freedom. But society is not going to like that. And they're going to say, okay, well, we're just going to limit religious freedom in general for everyone, because we can't pick favorites.
Yeah, well, it's
we can't call bad bad and good good.
Yeah,
because that would be bad.
That would be that would be infringing on
human rights.
The relativists who believe that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's that's unfortunately that's the end result of that situation. It sucks.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
And so to that we say objection, hearsay, to all of it.
Overruled.
It's all hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
I mean, look, if you go listen to episode 1, you might discover that it is all hearsay. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to this podcast episode or watching the YouTube video. JP appreciates it very, very much. And I kind of dig it as well. Don't forget to jump over to our website, www.donocast.co.za. Follow us on the socials, the Instagrams and stuff. Hopefully we'll get going there a little bit now after filming this episode. We've been on a bit of a go slow. But yeah, we hope to bring you guys good content in the coming weeks if we possibly can. And we thank you for all your support. We really, really look forward to doing these episodes every week. So give it a like and a thumbs up. Smash that like button and share this with your friends and family.
Don't kill babies. Thank you so much for watching that very fascinating episode about that very fascinating topic. We would like to remind you that we've got other fascinating episodes and other fascinating topics on our fascinating website.
Fascinating indeed, JB. We're also on the following social media networks: Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Wow, and we would love it if you would go there right now and comment on any one of them or all three of them, if you please.
It would be great. You're amazing. Don't you ever forget that.